billions of people around the world are watching World Cup today. Referees, rules, yellow cards, VAR technology. Everything is carefully organized. But what if I told you that the ancestors of this game considered broken bones a normal part of the match? If a player fell to the ground, no medics would come running. Instead, 50 other men would come charging over, trampling him in the relentless chase for the ball. It was complete chaos. And while the world watches the World Cup today, we're going back to a time when football looked more like a civil war. Welcome to SHROVE Tuesday Football. England. There were no stadiums, no stands, and no fixed number of players. Instead, an entire village against another entire village. Sometimes hundreds of people, sometimes even more. The moment the ball was thrown into play, chaos began. The objective? Get the ball to your side's target. The problem? The route could pass through entire streets, fields, forests, rivers, and sometimes entire towns. Imagine a football match that starts here and ends several miles away. Now imagine that you're not facing 11 opponents, but 3,000 people trying to bring you down. Punching was common. Shoving, pulling, throwing people to the ground, dragging opponents through mud. All of it was considered part of the game. Broken bones were common. Serious injuries were expected. Property damage was unavoidable. Authorities repeatedly tried to ban these events. Many failed. The festivals continued because people loved them. The violence wasn't a bug. It was part of the attraction. For one day, normal rules disappeared. Survival interlude. The ball drops. Hundreds charge forward. You are knocked to the ground. Before you can stand, 3 people run over you. Someone grabs your arm. Another grabs your shirt. The crowd surges toward a river. You suddenly realize nobody knows where the ball is anymore, and nobody seems to care. Now, I have a question for you. If a SHROVE Tuesday football match was held in your city tomorrow, would you join the game, or would you watch from a very safe distance? Imagine traveling for days to attend the biggest celebration of your life. You're trapped beneath hundreds of screaming people. Imagine dancing in a crowded ballroom when the floor suddenly vanishes, dropping you into a pit of human waste and death. This wasn't a nightmare. It was a real medieval festival. Today, we're ranking history's most chaotic celebrations, where the wine flowed with blood and the parties ended in mass casualties. People were poisoned, burned alive, crushed in crowds, beaten in ritualized riots, and sometimes murdered in front of thousands of witnesses. Today, we're counting down the deadliest and most chaotic festivals in medieval history, and by the end, you'll understand why some medieval people feared the celebration more than the journey home. When most people imagine medieval festivals, they picture music, dancing, colorful costumes, and overflowing mugs of ale. The reality was much darker. Medieval Europe was a dangerous place. Buildings were made of wood. Fire safety barely existed. Crowd control was almost non-existent. Medical knowledge was primitive, and thousands of people often gathered in spaces never designed to hold them. A single mistake could transform a celebration into a catastrophe. To rank these festivals, we're using 3 categories: body count, chaos, terror factor. In other words, if we dropped you into the middle of the crowd, how likely would you be to make it home alive? Let's begin. The Poisoned Feast. Imagine traveling for days to attend a noble wedding. The tables are covered with food. Roasted meat, fresh bread, barrels of wine. Everything seems perfect. Then people begin acting strangely. One guest starts hallucinating. Another collapses. Someone begins screaming at things that aren't there. Welcome to one of medieval Europe's most terrifying hidden dangers. Food poisoning wasn't simply an inconvenience. It could become a mass disaster. One major culprit was ergot contamination. Ergot is a fungus that can infect rye. When consumed, it can trigger hallucinations, convulsions, paranoia, and severe illness. People had no idea what was happening. Imagine sitting beside your family while dozens of guests suddenly become sick. No one understands the cause. No one knows how to stop it. For many medieval communities, this felt supernatural. Some believed demons were responsible. Others believed God was punishing them. And because food storage standards were poor, entire gatherings could be affected. Survival interlude. You're sitting at the banquet table. The music is playing. Someone drops a cup. Then another guest falls from their chair. A woman starts screaming. Across the room, panic spreads. Do you stay? Do you run? Or do you realize too late that you've already eaten the same bread as everyone else? Fortunately, poisoning was usually slow. The next disaster was not. The crowd crush. Humans are dangerous, but large crowds can be even worse. Throughout medieval Europe, religious celebrations attracted enormous numbers of pilgrims. People traveled for days, sometimes weeks. Narrow streets became packed. Bridges overflowed. Public squares became oceans of bodies. The problem was simple. Medieval towns were not designed for mass gatherings. When thousands tried to move through the same space, disaster followed. One push became 10. 10 became a wave. And suddenly, people lost control of their own movement. The terrifying thing about crowd crushes is that victims often cannot breathe. They remain standing, but pressure from every direction prevents their lungs from expanding. Within minutes, people collapse. Once someone falls, others fall on top of them. The pile grows, the panic grows, and escape becomes impossible. Survival interlude. You are surrounded, shoulder to shoulder. You try to step backward. You can't. You try to raise your arm. You can't. Then the crowd surges forward. For the first time, you realize you are no longer controlling where you move. The crowd is. And it doesn't care whether you survive. But if being crushed sounds terrible, wait until we add fire. The Bal des Ardents, Paris, 1393. One of the most infamous festival disasters in medieval history. The event was supposed to be entertaining. King Charles VI attended a grand masquerade celebration. Several noblemen dressed as wild men. To make the costumes realistic, they were covered in highly flammable materials. This was already a terrible idea. Then, someone carrying a torch came too close. One spark. That's all it took. The costumes ignited. Within seconds, the ballroom became a nightmare. Witnesses described men engulfed in flames. Guests screamed. People ran in every direction. Some desperately tried to extinguish the fire. Others fled. Several dancers died. One survived only because a noblewoman covered him with her gown and protected him from the flames. The disaster shocked France, but it also revealed a larger problem. Medieval celebrations relied heavily on open flames, thousands of candles, torches, fire pits. Combine those with crowded wooden buildings and disaster was always one mistake away. Survival interlude. You're dancing. The room is warm. Music fills the hall. Then, somebody shouts. You turn. A man is on fire. Another is running. The crowd surges toward the exits. Smoke fills the room. You have seconds to decide. Run? Hide? Help? Whatever choice you make could be your last. But surprisingly, the next entry was even more violent. When festivals became riots, the deadliest medieval celebrations often stopped being celebrations at all. Many festivals temporarily reversed social order. Servants mocked masters. Commoners mocked officials. Rules loosened. For a brief moment, society turned upside down. Most of the time, this remained harmless fun. Sometimes it exploded into violence. Crowds looted, fights erupted, property was destroyed. Authorities struggled to restore order. What began as entertainment transformed into mass unrest. And once a crowd realizes its size and power, controlling it becomes extremely difficult. The real danger wasn't one weapon, It wasn't one fire. It wasn't one collapse. It was thousands of people acting emotionally at the same time. That force has terrified rulers throughout history, and it still does today. But here's the strangest thing. People knew these festivals were dangerous. They attended anyway, every year. Why? Because medieval life was hard. Most people lived close to poverty. Disease was common, work was exhausting, entertainment was rare. Festivals offered something precious: escape. For a few hours, people could forget the hardships surrounding them. They could laugh, dance, compete, celebrate, even if there was risk, even if disaster was possible, even if some never came home. And that reveals something fascinating about human nature. The most dangerous part of medieval festivals wasn't the poison, it wasn't the fire, it wasn't the riots. It was the fact that people accepted the danger because the reward felt worth it. In many ways, humans haven't changed. We still gather in enormous crowds. We still attend festivals. We still take risks for experiences. The technology is different. The psychology is not. History remembers kings. History remembers wars. But sometimes the most terrifying place in medieval Europe wasn't the battlefield. It was the party. Now, we want to hear from you. Which medieval festival do you think you would survive? And which one would eliminate you immediately? Leave your answer in the comments. If you enjoyed this journey into the darkest celebrations in history, subscribe and join us for the next file from Sucking History Files. Because history is far stranger and far more dangerous than most people realize.